Equity Working Group meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to ask today's interpreter, Ruth, to introduce herself and walk through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Ruth, and I will repeat the message that follows in English. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor, desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego Interpretation y luego el idioma. Gracias. To use the Zoom interpreting feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are located. Click on the interpretation icon, which is the world icon, and select English as your language. If you are joining using the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipses, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask our clerk, Ms. Evelia Castellanos, to confirm if we have a quorum.
We have a quorum, Chair Moreno.
Thank you. I'd like to also review the process for both the working group members as well as members of the public who wish to speak under public comment. For working group members, when you'd like to speak, please click on the raised hand icon in the Zoom control panel. You have control of your video and mute, so please click the raise hand icon and turn on your camera when you'd like to speak, and I'll call on you. Does anybody have any questions before we continue? Hearing none, Ms. Evelia, can you please provide a quick reminder on how the public comment will work?
As noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda, in addition to email comments, the public also may provide live comments during today's meeting. To provide a live verbal comment during the meeting, please join the Zoom meeting either by computer or phone. At the time for public comments, members of the public are advised to raise hand. If you wish to provide comments, the raise hand feature can be found on the Zoom toolbar for those who are joining via computer, or by entering *9 for those joining via telephone only. The chair will call on members of the public by name of those joining via computer and by the last 3 digits of your telephone number for those joining via telephone. All comments received prior to the close of the meeting will be made part of the meeting record. The instructions for providing live comments also are on the bottom of the cover page of today's meeting agenda, which can be accessed from the homepage of SANDAG's website at www.sandag.org. Thank you.
Thank you. We're getting some feedback, so if you're not speaking, if you could please mute yourself. And I see Mr. Jones with his hand up. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is under just public comments. 2 quick items. First, I note in today's news, it's in the Voice of San Diego.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you because this is not public comment yet. We'll get there very soon, though.
Okay, very good.
Yes, sorry about that. We'll get there very, very soon, I promise. Okay, we're going to move on to a welcome and introduction. This is for the working group members. I'd like you to introduce yourselves, your organization, and the area of the region that you serve. And so let's start. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Vivian Moreno. I'm the council member for District 8 in the city of San Diego, and I have the honor of being the chair. I'm going to move it on to Craig Jones. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Pardon me for being premature. Craig Jones, I'm with the Alliance for Regional Solutions. We're a robust collaborative representing over 70 community-based organizations in North County and the city governments in North County and the County of San Diego, areas roughly north of 56, and glad to be a partner with our other North County representatives on this body as well as everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, if you're there, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Hindley, and I represent Bayside Community Center in Linda Vista. My colleague Rose is the working group member, so I am just here as an attendee today, but thank you very much, Chair Moreno.
Thank you. Lisa Cuestas?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Lisa Cuestas, representing Casa Familiar based in San Isidro. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy Torres Van Vleck?
Thank you, Chair. This is Randy Torres Van Vleck, Director of Policy and Planning at the City Heights CDC. Also here with Hani Mohammed, our Transportation and Planning Manager. And City Heights CDC focuses on City Heights and surrounding mid-city communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Brenda Lee? Moving on to Carol Lewis. Okay, not hearing.
Good morning. No, I'm here. Sorry, just trying to unmute. Good morning, Chair Moreno and all of our attendees. I'm Carol Lewis. I'm with El Cajon Collaborative and represent East County.
Thank you. Konani?
Hi, good morning. My name is Konani Martinez. I am the faculty director of the National Latino Research Center based at Cal State San Marcos, and we work in collaboration with Latino communities in North County. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Elizabeth Liu and Mr. Mohammed Tuama? Okay, not hearing them. Claire?
Good morning, everyone. This is Claire Grebner with Olivewood Gardens and Learning Center, and we serve National City and San Diego's South Bay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Faye?
Good morning, everyone. This is Beth Seligman with Samahan Health Centers, and we represent National City and the South Bay region. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Barry?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Madam Chair, I'm Barry Pollard with the Urban Collaborative Project, and we represent Southeastern San Diego.
Wonderful. Thank you. Erica?
Good morning, everyone. This is Erica Leary with the Vista Community Clinic up in the Oceanside Vista.
Thank you. Going back up to the Chula Vista Community Collaborative. Anybody from?
Yes, good morning. My name is Azucena Lopez de Navra from Chula Vista Community. We represent the west side of Chula Vista.
Thank you. Anybody from the Nile Sister Development Initiative?
Yes, hi, this is Brianne Lash. I'm from Nile Sisters Development Initiative. We are located in City Heights, but we provide services across San Diego County.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. I think I got everybody. If not, this is your moment to introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning. This is Rose Ceballos with Bayside Community Center. We represent the Linda Vista area of San Diego.
Thank you. Did I miss anybody else?
Yes, Chair Moreno. This is Rosina Cole. I'm representing National City and the 315 group of kitchenistas on South Bay National City impacting the South region.
Thank you. All right. I think that is everybody, but if I miss somebody, this is the time to step up. If not, we're going to move on to the next item. Next item is item number 2, which is member public comment. So if working group members have any comments or announcements of interest to the rest of the working group, please either turn on your camera or raise your hand at this time. And I know Mr. Craig Jones had a public comment, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just 2 quick items. First, it's in today's news that the City of San Diego Council Land Use Committee, I believe, has approved unanimously moving forward the revised Barrio Logan Community Plan. This plan is an amazing achievement, moves forward long-awaited social equity and great improvements for the Barrio Logan community. Great thanks to our chair, Councilwoman Moreno, for championing this and moving it forward. The second thing I want to note is that the County of San Diego has released a draft regional decarbonization framework plan, which I've given a quick first read through. It's an amazing document. It's incredibly totally consistent with the draft regional 5 big moves regional transportation plan. The two should work well together. It's a recommended read for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay, let's see, I'm not seeing any. So this is any members of the public that want the opportunity to address the working group on any issues within the jurisdiction of Sandag that is not on the agenda. And clerk, if you could verify if there's any public comment.
I don't see any hands raised, Chair Moreno.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next item. The next item, we're going to proceed with the meeting minutes from October 7th, 2021. May I have a motion?
So moved. Barry Pollard.
Mr. Pollard, I'm happy to, I think I could, here, I'll allow somebody else a second.
Yes.
Carol Lewis, second.
Ms. Lewis, thank you for seconding that. Do we have, let's see. Do we have any comments from the public? I don't think we do. So we have a motion by Mr. Barry Pollard, a second by, I believe it was Ms. Lewis. And clerk, if you could call the roll call vote, please.
Alliance for Regional Solutions, Craig Jones.
Vote aye, approve.
Bayside Community Clinic, Rose Ceballos.
Aye.
Casa Familiar, Lisa Cuestas.
Aye.
Chula Vista Community Collaborative, Azucena Lopez de Nava.
Aye.
City Heights CDC, Randy Torres Van Vleck.
I will be speaking on behalf of Randy. I approve.
El Cajon Collaborative, Carol Lewis.
Aye.
National Latino Research Center, Conani Martinez.
Yes.
Niles Sisters Development Initiative, Brianne Lash.
Aye.
Olivewood Gardens, Claire Grosvenor.
Approve.
Samahan Health Centers, Faye Seligman.
I approve.
Urban Collaborative Project, Brian Barry Pollard.
Yes.
Vista Community Clinic, Erica Leary.
Aye.
And if I go back to City Heights CDC, the person that approved is Haney Mohammed.
Yes, Hani Mohammed, Transportation and Planning Program Manager.
And the minutes of October 7th passed unanimously.
Wonderful, thank you. So item 1 passes unanimously, and we're going to move on to the next item, which is the chair's report. I'm happy to announce the approval of the fiscal year 22 budget amendment for the Social Equity Early Action Transit Pilot at the last Board of Directors meeting on October 22nd. This creates a new overall work program project for the pilot, which is going to include the free transit fares for all youth 18 and under, transit improvements on high demand routes, outreach, and education in our region's most underserved communities. I want to thank all the working group members for pushing this early action pilot forward, and special shout out to Mid-City CAN for their long time advocating for the youth opportunity passes. Also, Sandag's Mid-Coast Trolley is scheduled to have its grand opening later this month on November 21st, adding 11 miles to the UC San Diego Blue Line Trolley and extending services from downtown San Diego to the university community. I invite you all to attend the free community event that's going to be held at UCSD, and you can get there through the new line. For more information, you guys can go to the MTS or Sandag website. This is also a reminder to mark your calendars for the December 10th board meeting, where staff's going to present the final draft of the 2021 regional plan with its proposed changes in response to your public comments for approval. This is going to mark a monumental day for the San Diego region, and thank you for your continuous hard work and support. I also want to take this opportunity to congratulate one of our working group members, Randy Torres Van Vleck, on the birth of a healthy baby. Congratulations. I know you're not getting a lot of sleep, but we're very, very happy for you and your family. Now, if working group members would like to make any comments or if you have any questions on the chair's report, please either turn on your camera or raise your hand at this time. I don't see anybody with their hand raised. So we're going to go over to the clerk to see if we have any public comment.
I don't see any hands raised.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item number 5 is an update at the Sandag Equity Action Plan. As you know, earlier this year, Sandag adopted a commitment to equity statement, to which all of you contributed. Today we have Ms. Elizabeth Cox, who's going to provide us an update on the implementation of the commitment to equity statement and the engagement plans for the development of the Sandag Equity Action Plan in 2022. I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Can someone give me a thumbs up or a verbal that you can see my slides? Okay, great.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, good morning. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces, so many friendly faces, and so many new ones. It's been a while since I had the opportunity to connect with this group, and I'm glad to be back with you for this item today. This is an update on Sandag's progress developing an equity action plan, and we wanted to make sure that we came to the CBO group, to the Social Equity Working Group, ahead of an update that we intend to give our board of directors next month. As Chair Moreno mentioned earlier this year, you were really helpful in helping us craft a statement that affirms our commitment to equity. And framed within that equity statement are 5 clear expectations for what our equity action plan will do. First, it's intended to inform how we plan, prioritize, fund, and build projects and programs, to frame how we will work with our communities, to define how we recruit and develop our employees, to guide how our efforts to conduct unbiased research and interpret data, and to set expectations for companies and stakeholders that work with us. And we're keeping these objectives in mind as we continue to lay the foundation for our eventual equity action plan. In recent months, a lot of both intention and attention has been invested in advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, within the organization. And I'd like to highlight a few of these activities for you this morning. So this spring, Sandag joined the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or GARE, to connect and learn with other government employees that are working to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in public service. Our staff are also participating in various working groups and peer exchanges with metropolitan planning organizations and sister agencies in California and across the country. And these communities offer a really rich exchange of experiences, ideas, best practices. It's an opportunity for us to connect with our peers. And together it's helping us all to know better, to be better, and to do better through our work. This year, Sandag seated a 12-member DEI council that represents a wide spectrum of diversity within the organization. And included among our members are your very own working group liaison, Dr. Jane Clough. And the council is chaired by Tueri Faola, who you will hear from in a later item on your agenda today. And this council started with an internal focus on matters related to what we call the employee experience. What does it mean to be a member of Team Sandag? How does it feel? And the council reviewed survey insights and identified opportunities for action based on input that was provided by our employees. The council recently formed subcommittees to support the creation of employee resource groups and to revisit the employee onboarding and buddy program. So as new employees are hired, how are they welcomed into the Sandag team? Informally, affinity groups were created by our employees to support Asian American Pacific Islander, AAPI employees, as well as Black employees. And we're looking forward to expanding those ERGs, again, employee resource groups in 2022. This summer, the council started planning and hosting a series of DEI lunch and learn sessions that are helping to foster cultural competence and awareness. So far, they hosted 3 sessions, one focused on Juneteenth, one on Hispanic American History Month, and one on Indigenous Peoples Day. And those have been really well attended and very much appreciated by our employees. We partnered with a DEI practitioner to provide initial trainings to our DEI council, as well as to our executive team. And the 3 initial topics touched on emotional intelligence, unconscious bias, and microaggressions. And as a next step, the DEI Council has recommended that unconscious bias training be offered to all of our employees in 2022. So we're currently working on a plan to make that happen. This summer, we had more than 40 employees engage in completing the Global DEI Benchmarks Assessment that outlines standards for organization. And this assessment includes 15 categories and 275 benchmarks. And through this process, we had 2 virtual workshops and dozens of recommendations were shaped. And those came through what are 4 groups within the structure of the global DEI benchmarks, including foundation, internal, external, and bridging. And you can see the triangle, sort of the mental model for what that framework looks like. We had a smaller team of employees that conducted a qualitative review of the ratings and recommendations from the much larger group. And some of the recommendations are already being considered and or implemented as part of our strategic initiatives. We've envisioned that the remaining recommendations will be reviewed and prioritized as our equity action plan is developed. This summer, all of our employees were invited to contribute to developing an inventory of equity-related activities. So this includes all of the programs, projects, policies, processes, and plans throughout the organization, wherever equity is already being considered or where it has the potential to be considered even more. And staff are currently reviewing and preparing a thematic summary of that inventory to present in December. So I just shared with you some of the internal work that we've been doing to advance DEI at Sandag. And while development of our equity action plan is ongoing, we're not waiting for a plan to be adopted to advance work that helps to implement our equity statement. And so I'd like to walk through a few of those highlights with you now. So Jane, let me know about your CBO's excellent work conducting community mobility needs assessments, and your input, as Chair Moreno mentioned, also helped to shape the social equity early action transit pilots that were approved by the board last month. As Chair Moreno mentioned, this will provide free transit for all youth 18 and under starting next spring, as well as increasing transit services in historically underserved areas. And funds were also allocated for a research study to evaluate the benefits of the pilot project. So we're looking forward to that. Sandag recently partnered with the San Diego Futures Foundation to donate more than 100 used computers, which will be refurbished for people with limited incomes, seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, foster families, and nonprofit organizations. And you're already aware of the task force that was convened to create the regional digital equity strategy. This effort is designed to ensure that the region is working towards bridging the digital divide so that everyone in San Diego County has affordable broadband access. And the Digital Equity Action Plan will be presented to the Board of Directors towards the middle of next month. Also next month, as Chair Moreno mentioned, the board will be asked to adopt the 2021 regional plan, for which the Regional Social Equity Planning Framework was developed with your input. And as the planning framework says, quote, Sandag is committed to prioritizing equity and inclusion as an organization and in our work serving the region. It all starts with the 2021 regional plan, end quote. So we're looking forward to that next month. In July, our board also approved moving forward with negotiations for a community benefits agreement, or CBA. And a CBA will establish equity programs for low-income people, including targeted workers and veterans programs. And it will also implement a local hire program that uses a skilled and trained workforce. The board also recently approved the Regional Equitable Housing Subcommittee that will discuss housing solutions that are local, regionally integrated, equitable, sustainable, and incentive and investment based. And you'll hear more about SANDAG's housing incentive program from Tueri shortly. In partnership with UC San Diego's School of Global Policy, SANDAG is working on localizing data related to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And these were adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We've also started gathering data and analyzing it to develop a baseline conditions report that will provide metrics from which we can measure progress of the eventual implementation of our equity action plan. This report is also an early action of the draft 2021 regional plan, so we'll be coordinating with Jane on that. And the baseline report is envisioned to explore themes of health, wealth, access, and opportunity, focusing on race and ethnicity, linguistic isolation, disability, and income. And we'd like to schedule a meeting with your CBO outreach team to share plans for the baseline report and get input on the indicators to consider before the report is compiled early next year. So you'll be hearing more from Jane on that soon. So in terms of next steps, in 2022, we're planning for public engagement to continue development of our equity action plan. We're seeking professional assistance from a consultant to provide independent advice, recommendations, and guidance on the strategy for developing our equity action plan. We really want to create an atmosphere where employees and stakeholders can participate in all phases of developing the plan, and we're seeking third-party guidance to neutralize any perceived or actual bias that might result from a management-driven process. Once the consultant is on board, an approach to developing the equity action plan and our accompanying outreach activities will be prepared. And we'd like to schedule follow-up conversation with your CBO outreach team to invite ideas for how to carry out the public engagement in the new year. We've imagined that outreach could include workshops or focus groups, potentially a survey, and we want to hear more from you about who we should engage and how. And so as we develop the work plan for preparing our equity action plan, we'd like to invite you to be a partner with us, to be involved and to advise us on this journey. This work is so much more powerful when it's done within the community and connecting and collaborating with you to develop an equity action plan that will result in really meaningful changes for our region. At the December 17th Board of Directors meeting, we intend to share a similar update on the internal DEI work that's been undertaken in 2021 and the early actions to advance implementation of our equity statement. Definitely hope you'll tune in, and we look forward to coming back to share updates and invite input from you really soon. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to share this update with you today, and we look forward to sharing future updates as we progress. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elizabeth. If working members have any comments, please raise your hand or turn on your camera. Let me see, let me give you a few. All right, I have Mr. Barry Pollard followed by Lisa Cuestas.
Okay, my video's on, my mute's off. Great. Elizabeth, you did a fantastic job. And I am probably one of the most cynical folks when we talk about equity and how that gets addressed in different organizations. And I have to tell you that in my circles, I brag about what SANDAG has been doing and the good faith effort and the actually getting in the weeds with some of these equity sort of needs that we have. I have one suggestion that I don't know if this is our bailiwick, if you will, or not, or wheelhouse. I'm wondering internally with SANDAG, the level of brown and black middle managers and how that is done internally to promote people. I know the folks and the staff folks has a good representation, but just wondering. So I don't know if you want to do anything with that. I don't know if I want any response on that. I think I just want to maybe put it in the conversation internally that someone should probably ask for managers, upper managers, and see if that if the equity goes within the organization upward. And it could. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just, it hit me right here. That's my old human resources background, you guys. So I just want to throw that in there. The rest of it, I have no complaints. You guys are killing. I mean, even I looked at a number of times the recent regional video that you put on with the regional plan that I've been showing. And, you know, I look at that and a lot of times, and each time it's with a different lens. And you guys, you know, even the communication stuff that I've been complaining about, right? When I see those videos, they are understandable. They are, yeah, they're understandable for everyone. So, you know, I mean, I must be in a good mood today because I've got no complaints. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard. So we're going to move on to Lisa Cuestas, followed by Craig Jones.
Hi, thank you, Chair Moreno, and thank you very much, Elizabeth. That was a great presentation, and I really like that it ended on highlighting connection and collaboration. And I think one of the pieces that I would like to see where connection and collaboration start to happen in a more intentional way is with MTS as well, and really specifically with when we're talking about equity. You know, what does that look like in the community when we're talking about plans, when we're talking about, you know, a San Isidro Mobility Hub plan. There's things that are in communities that are not equitable right now, and where MTS plays a role as well. And I think between the efforts that SANDAG is doing a great job of elevating, when it impacts the built environment in a community. And this is something that I've brought up to Chair Moreno various times, you know, example, the bathrooms at the San Isidro border station that are owned by MTS. It's just not something that is correct. It's not something that is equitable, and it's something that needs to be solved, I think, by connecting and collaborating more with MTS. So I thank Chair for agreeing to meet with us to talk about this a little bit more, and a group hopefully to take a really hard look with different stakeholders, different experts, and stakeholders in San Isidro to really make sure that those resources towards the San Isidro Mobility Hub don't get wasted for a second time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Cuestas. We're going to move on to Mr. Craig Jones, followed by Ms. Carol Lewis.
Thank you. I'll just briefly echo what Barry and Elisa have said. This presentation this morning seems to show a very vigorous and multifaceted effort to promote equity both internally and externally through everything that SANDAG seems to be doing. So great kudos there. As always, the devil is in the details and the proof is in the pudding. So pardon those two cliches. We look forward to continuing to work with SANDAG on making sure that especially transportation access provides first and foremost improvements in access to disadvantaged communities. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Lewis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Moreno. Elizabeth, I just want to say thank you. I think this is the most exciting thing that has happened to me, that I'm most excited about in SANDAG for a long time. I mean, I'm really thrilled about the regional plan this year, but this was the one element that I really felt was a little lacking. So this is so exciting to see you bring this to us. I'm just hoping that maybe we can do this as a regular monthly update, Jane. And Elizabeth doesn't have to come every month, but maybe if we can just get an update each month of what's going on as this action plan is being developed, I would be really excited to hear more.
Wonderful, thank you. I don't see any other members with their hands up, so we're going to take it over now to public comment. And clerk, if you could verify if there's any public comment, any people of the public wishing to speak.
I don't see any hands raised in the public area, Chair Moreno.
You. Well, thank you to Miss Elizabeth. We appreciate you coming and presenting. And we're going to move on to item number 6, which is the Regional Housing Incentive Program. And we're going to get an update. And today we have Tueri Faola from Sandag, who will share an update on the Regional Housing Incentive Program and the upcoming call for projects. I'm going to hand it over to Tueri.
Okay, good morning, everyone. And I'm just thumbs up. You can see my screen, hear me okay? Perfect. Okay, well, good morning. And thank you, Elizabeth, for kicking our meeting off with such a really great presentation. And I think kind of dovetails very nicely into what I'm going to talk about for Sandag's Housing Incentive Program and our call for projects. So I'm really here to just try and give an overview and keep our CBOs and this working group engaged in the work that we're doing here at Sandag for housing. There are a lot of new opportunities and new funding that is coming to the San Diego, it's already came to the San Diego region and is going to continue to keep coming. And I'm going to be doing a similar presentation to the Regional Planning Committee tomorrow, as well as the Board of Directors on November 19th. But the importance of this work is something that has been discussed by this group very often. You know, up and down the state, people are coming to the realization that the housing crisis is an issue that really needs to be addressed regionally. And I'm here to talk to you about Sandag's approach to housing acceleration as well as smart growth. So in 2019, the state legislature passed Assembly Bill 101, and this is a one-time grant funding opportunity that came to the San Diego region through Sandag from California Department of Housing and Community Development to NPOs like us to collaborate on housing projects at the regional scale, but also to position regional governments to help locals and local governments achieve their housing goals and facilitate housing production. And so this program is called Regional Early Action Planning, but you'll hear me often refer to it as REAP. And so the REAP allocation that was given to this to the San Diego region was $6.8 million, and it has to be expended actually by 2023. So we have a lot of work ahead of us in a very short time frame. We received 1.7 million in 2020, and we just received the approval for the additional 1.5 million this very month. So you're the first people to hear that we actually got that final approval on the 5.1. But through this new opportunity, Sandag is taking the leadership role by creating a housing program that works towards solving housing affordability and addressing how we also meet our climate goals. And we're starting with creating a housing plan that focuses on what you see here on the screen, the 5 Ps that we're developing our housing framework around. And the housing framework of these 5 Ps is centered around producing housing for all. So it really sets forth standards for zoning that allow for a variety of housing types to be developed with a goal to meet the housing needs of all income groups. It's centered around preserving vulnerable housing, so really analyzing and looking at those units that are at risk of losing their affordability and discussing the cost to preserve versus replace them. Promoting equity and sustainability. As I said, we're really looking at how we promote our climate goals in addition to our equity goals when it comes to housing. And so this is really an intentional focus on dismantling the structural and systemic barriers that have prevented the promise of opportunity from being available to all of our San Diegans. And then protecting tenants. If we learned anything through the COVID-19 pandemic, it really showed us the importance of housing stability, and protecting the tenants really placed an emphasis on community stability. And certainly last but not least, preventing displacement. So establishing policies that prevent displacement, which includes acknowledging and understanding that there were past injustices that have resulted in redlining and also have displaced many low income and communities of color. And so these are the 5 Ps of our housing framework, and we're going to be working towards developing and fleshing this out a bit more. So as we are establishing the housing program, we also surveyed our local jurisdictions just to understand what are their biggest challenges towards accelerating the production of housing in our region. And there were several barriers that they identified, but one of the biggest that we heard as a concern and a need is for regional leadership and for regional resources. So our team has been working towards identifying resources that SANDAG can offer to local jurisdictions, from educational opportunities, additional GIS resources, regional guidance, such as anti-displacement strategies. That's been a topic that this working group has discussed several times, and it's actually also an early action implementation within our 2021 regional plan, as well as we have established that we need to look at how we can provide additional funding opportunities to the locals to help them to accelerate housing and our climate action plan goals. So to begin with that funding challenge that the locals said that was a big need from a regional scale, we're providing 2 grant opportunities for the locals to apply for. One is using those REAP funds, and this is a new housing acceleration grant program that we haven't had at SANDAG before. So this is a new one that we're starting with. And then the other is taking our Smart Growth Incentive Program and really coupling them together. So the reason we're releasing them together is, again, we find that the goals of both programs are complementary, and they can really help to support one another so that we can start to achieve our regional goals, providing more equitable and affordable housing, but also helping us to do smart growth planning, which allows us to have more sustainable development, but also really looking at how we can achieve those climate action planning goals that all of the locals have set, as well as what the goals that we have to achieve at a regional scale. So here on the screen, you can see that each call is for $3 million, so a total of $6 million with them both together. And something that I think is important for this group to hear and to know, and that's different with these call for projects that we haven't done before when we've released grants like this, is that we're allowing jurisdictions to create partnerships. And those partnerships can also be with community-based organizations and nonprofits. So you are eligible to be co-applicants with the cities when we release this call for projects to apply and propose projects using these funds. And then my last slide here is I want to highlight, and I think Elizabeth, she really touched on breaking down exactly what our commitment to equity statement was that the board adopted in February of this year, and that you all helped staff kind of frame and put together. So as a result of that work and the commitment from our board, the criteria related to equity has been integrated into both of these call for projects. And it's something that we're really, looking at how we can start to elevate the equity elements within all of the grant programs that we're doing within SANDAG. And integrating equity isn't just something that's being required here at the local level and that our board has committed to within that commitment to equity statement, but it's also something that all of the local jurisdictions as part of their housing elements have to integrate as well. Effective on January 1st of this year, all new housing elements now must address how they will affirmatively further fair housing. And what that means is that within their housing elements, they must state how they'll facilitate deliberate actions to address, combat, and relieve disparities of housing discrimination. So it's really taking a very focused look at how we start to address equity in our housing elements. SANDAG is also taking a really focused look at how we address and prioritize equity in the grant programs that we distribute to the locals. So what we've done with both the Housing Acceleration Program and the Smart Growth Incentive Program is we've broken the equity criteria, which I should state, it also has, it's one of the highest point valued questions within the call for projects when it will be released. But we've broken that down into 3 categories for jurisdictions to demonstrate how they're promoting equity. And they can either demonstrate and show that at a citywide scale, so they can tell us and describe what their citywide strategies are for promoting equity. They can also tell us what the strategies are to attract investments into lower resource areas, or they can tell us how they're putting forward strategies for equity to attract things such as affordable housing, equitable housing, really looking at how we expand those housing choices in some of our higher opportunity areas. An example of that you probably can relate to is how when we talk about employment centers in Kearney, Mesa, and Sereno Valley and mobility hubs, how we start to really bring housing choice into those communities and how we really encourage reduced vehicle miles travel, which helps us to meet some of our state goals for reducing GHG, and also how we can start to meet some of our individual climate action plan goals that we have here at the city level. So that is, I just wanted to provide an update. I'm happy to take any question. I have a few members of my team here with me as well. So I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tori. All right, folks, this is your opportunity to comment and ask questions. So we are going to start with Craig Jones, followed by Faye Salman.
Wonderful to receive this presentation this morning. The twin goals of, or triple goals of providing transportation access, of addressing climate change, and providing affordable housing opportunities must all three go together. The model that I think, what does this mean geographically? Providing housing opportunities, what does it mean geographically, while also addressing climate change? To me, it means using the model that Sandag has provided, concentrating regional development into the mobility hub areas. That will achieve everything that we need to do, together with vigorous making sure that development of affordable housing opportunities are truly affordable and long-term. I'd like to see the award of the grants that Sandag is moving forward here to be tied to consistency with the mobility hub areas too. Thank you for moving this forward.
Thank you, Craig. And we definitely agree with you. And there's also, while I didn't speak to it specifically, you will see that we have highlighted furthering mobility hub implementation as a priority within the call for projects as well.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Ms. Faye, followed by Erica Leary. Ms. Faye, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair Moreno. I'm very impressed by the work that you're doing. Thank you so much. And I would like to raise two items that you had mentioned that I think resonated so well with me. It's the prevention of displacement and protection of tenants. And as we all know, that when there's a housing boom, they're not only changing the type of tenants are taking place in the community, but they're also shoving away those who really need housing the most. So I'm very happy that these are now placed, these measures or these standards are now placed as part of the planning process, but I'd like to see the details on how it's going to happen, and also how this housing these housing projects will be made accessible to the low-income communities. So I think what I'd like to raise is really the details on how this will work out.
Thank you. No, thank you for your comment. And we'll be happy to share more of the details as we start developing the plan more. I believe Elizabeth mentioned that our board last month also approved the formation of a regional equitable housing subcommittee of the board. And so we'll be taking a lot of this work that I presented here today. When that subcommittee is officially formed with its membership, we'll be working with them as well to help flesh this out a bit more. And we'll certainly be coming back to this working group often with updates.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So next up we have Erica Leary, followed by Rosina. Erica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have a feeling my question is the same as Faye's. I just was wondering if there was a specific example type of applicant I'm just having a hard time conceptualizing what this grant program would provide or the type of projects. We do hear locally a lot about displacement and we don't have rent control in our communities, and with property values skyrocketing, there's incentive for property owners of complexes to renovate and then charge much higher rents. So community members get displaced from their neighborhoods, and just was wondering about more specific examples of what kinds of projects this would involve. Thank you.
Yeah, and Erica, I'll quickly touch on it, but we're going to be having a workshop on December 7th. We haven't advertised it yet because we have to go to the board on the 19th to get permission to release the call for projects. And once we get approval from them that we're able to release it, then we'll start advertising that workshop where we can talk more about the details on the types of projects. But there's the application, it's for the call for projects. We'll have a bit more detail in really explaining what types of projects would be eligible. The housing acceleration program, very focused on housing. And so really projects that would help accelerate the production of housing, whether it's putting in something that helps to streamline ADUs, putting in place that you need more support in order to process permits. And so I don't want to take too much of our time today and go through the full list, but I'd be happy to connect with you offline. And again, we will have this information available when we put forward the workshop after approval of the board to release the funds.
I'm on mute. Does that complete your comments or questions? Okay.
For me, yes, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And then now we're going to move on to Ms. Rosina, followed by Mr. Barry.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. This is really exciting because on top of food insecurity that we've been facing since a long time ago, we also face housing insecurity. So that's not a good thing to deal with. I would like to see, I'm excited to see that you have, as a SANDAC entity, that you've got all this taking in consideration for communities like ours. But I would like to see more clarity that it will be something that is a component of this project or this granting opportunity for home ownership versus leasing opportunities for people that are laborers that are not able to afford a home, especially in sanctuary cities or the concentration of people that come from other countries. This leads a lot of these problematic family decisions on leave and displays, not only personally, but job displacement as well. So I would like to see more clarity in what it means to have more home ownership opportunities versus just leasing from cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment. We'll look towards integrating that.
Wonderful, thank you. I believe Mr. Barry Pollard's up next.
Yes, I got just a couple of a question and a comment, and they're not exactly the type of questions we've been getting. This is like higher up the food chain is. I guess the question that I have is in general, and SANDAG keeps a whole lot of records and data. I have been trying to get an accurate number of affordable housing units throughout the city and the county. And I have been trying to do this for a while, and I cannot get an accurate count because the data is not centrally collected in one location, apparently. I've gone through the Housing Commission and they have a set of numbers, but that doesn't include the X. The X is permits that are being pulled, right? And so it would be nice if SANDAG, and this is not an emergency sort of thing, but just in general, to have some sort of accurate count of where the housing is. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're getting involved in some of the housing issues here. One of the things that's kind of crazy is that the motivation for getting more affordable housing units are to help kids in our communities, primarily, right? But other people that need housing in our communities. What seems to be happening is because of the lack of paperwork that is submitted, something that simple. There are people outside of our communities that are moving into these affordable housing units, really doing the same thing of gentrification that we really didn't want in the first place. Now they're not buying houses, but they are taking up spaces for the residents in our communities. So as you progress down this path, having some sort of someone to help folks fill out the necessary paperwork so we can bring down those numbers. I'm just afraid that we're doing a whole lot of things. It's not getting tracked. So we really don't know what is working and what isn't working. It was because I was asking questions about who is actually moving into some of these units that I flushed it out, that in reality, it's not people that live in this case in 92114 or 92102 or any of the local zip codes. They're people from downtown. They're people from Point Loma. There's folks from all over the place, which generally, I mean, I wouldn't care, but if we are trying to stabilize housing in our community, I think there's some gaps. And like I said, there's nothing for you guys to do immediately. I want, as you run across these programs, Terry, I would suggest just be aware of that stuff as you start to get into the weeds. And down the road, if you have any questions, give me a call. Because like I said, we're getting involved in it, and there's some gaps. There are some gaps. A lot of times these developers don't even ask for input from the community, you guys. I mean, I got involved in one just recently that I had to, be me, and ask these tough questions that nobody was asking and nobody really wanted to answer. So anyway, just be aware of that stuff, and it's the actual number of housing, local residents first, and appropriate outreach when these developers come in our community. A lot of this is like ministerial, right? If it's part of the pub, if it's part of the community plan, it doesn't matter if these developers don't come to the community because it fits the zoning. So there's some things that need to be worked on, and I just wanted to put the yellow flag up and say let's be aware of these things, because I'm sure it's happening in a bunch of other communities as well. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. We're going to go to Claire, followed by Lisa, then Konani, and we're going to take it back to Rosina because she has a few other statements. So Claire, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to share Rosina's, but I will let her go ahead and do that. I mostly would like to echo a lot of what's already been said. We're seeing a lot of displacement in National City, and Rosina will speak to this a little bit later, but it's really impacting our schools, and it kind of has a domino effect of people leaving, cities losing funding as a result of that. So I think the anti-displacement strategies are going to be really important, and I'm also curious to learn more about those. I'm also, I would encourage there to be some short-term solutions, and I'm curious to see if there's been a conversation about that. I think that we recognize that the current inflation and cost of homes will continue to remain high, and so displacement will continue to happen over the course of the next few years. And so the more we can develop strategies to prevent that in the short term as well as the long term, I think will be really important. Additionally, speaking kind of to Rosina's comment about home ownership, the San Diego Foundation has the San Diego Black Homebuyers Fund. And so I was curious if there's any conversations. I'm not sure if this is, part of a SANDAG conversation or if this is more on a local level, but looking at ways to, support communities that have been historically, prevented from home ownership through redlining, if there's conversations about how to improve home ownership opportunities through this particular effort. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just speak to your last comment if you don't mind here. So yes, that's one of the, particularly when you're talking about displacement and how we're looking at the communities that have been historically redlined and displaced. That is part of the framework that we're looking at as part of the housing plan. So we are just starting this work. So we're really bringing this to you at the early part of its inception so we can get your feedback and start working, with our consultant who's helping develop some of this. But most definitely, Claire, we are looking at how that's integrated into the plan.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you. So we're moving on to Lisa Cuestas, followed by Kunani Martinez, and taking it back to Rosina.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to be able to, thank you so much for talking about housing. I'm so glad CASA has been providing affordable housing for a very long time. And one of the things that I want to be able to share and to continue to elevate in every housing conversation is that when it comes to grant funding, when it comes to providing support, I think ideas and projects and solutions that are being presented that will create permanent affordable housing should have priority and be much more competitive in any application process. We've seen a lot of models where there's affordability that can be insured for 15 years, for 55 years. We will continue to have this problem for generations to come if we don't prioritize at some point permanent affordable housing solutions. So that there will always be displacement if some of these innovative ideas, where it's not that innovative really. I mean, there's a lot of models in different very urban areas, like in the Bay Area, of things like community land trusts. That's something that CASA's looking to, and other groups in San Diego. And I think finally there's some political will to really take a hard look at that, and should be something that SANDAG starts to take a look at as well.
Thank you. I very much imagine that's a topic that will be discussed as part of our new subcommittee.
Thank you, Lisa. Moving on to Konani.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This has sort of been touched on briefly, but I wanted just to reiterate the importance of looking at the new Census 2020 data and the redistricting that's going to be happening in San Diego. There are literally meetings being done right now where they're carving up the county into these new districts. And this is going to have a profound effect on not only every aspect of our communities, but housing especially, and the political will needed to move equitable housing and healthy housing forward. And so if anybody has a chance to participate in these meetings, they are conducted over Zoom as well as in person, but there's been very little representation from what I can see from community groups. North County has been particularly active, and especially concerns about Escondido being sort of excluded from the process of where they might lie within the North County communities. So this is something that should be on all of our radars on the impact, especially on housing, that this process is going to have on our communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to call on Rosina.
Thank you, Chair Moreno, for that opportunity. I just wanted to continue my comment, and I know it's important, and it moves all of our hearts to see that schools are being funded depending on enrollment, and we all know about this. As a current board member, I can tell that this is impacting everyone, no matter how raised you are, what community you are. It impacts us all, especially the communities are concerned that we sadly said that they're called as communities are concerned. This impacts negatively and the family decision to leave the country, to leave the state, to another opportunity for your family as a family household. It's not a housing crisis, it's a home ownership crisis. We cannot afford, communities like us, we cannot afford that. And the only thing we can afford is a fixer-upper. So, and still they make us barriers to get that fixer-upper, to have it done, and another investor come over and take over and rent it like so high that we cannot even afford it. So it is all my comment. Thank you, Vivian Moreno, for catching that part and mention it to this publicly, because this is a very homeownership crisis that leads to displacement and that impacts in any aspect of our life. Thank you for having the consideration of this.
Thank you, Ms. Rosina. And we appreciate your comments. I noticed them on the chat, and I absolutely wanted to make them part of the record. So thank you for commenting. Anybody else? I see Mr. Pollard's hand up, but I believe that's from before. And so if no other committee member would like to be recognized, we're going to move it over to the
Chair.
Oh, yes.
Chair Moreno, I think the same goes for Craig Jones. We had some comments in the chat. He really needs to make them
wonderful.
On the public record.
Mr. Jones, the floor is yours.
I'll be glad to. I didn't want to take up too much time, but the discussion of housing affordability and displacement is really gaining some traction. I was part of a community discussion, a virtual event last night, where the same issues came up. And I offered the creative idea, which I called radical, of allowing long-term renters to gain equity in the value of the units that they've been supporting with their rent over time. And I was surprised that panelists in this event, including representation from the San Diego Housing Federation, said that's not so radical and is something that would really help. Advantaged families like mine, for example, have enjoyed generationally building up financial equity through real estate, and allowing renters to do the same thing would really advance the issue of social equity for all of us. So it takes creative thinking. These are things that especially SANDAG, with its authority and weight and ability to influence state legislation, could help move forward. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments. So we're gonna, now I'm gonna turn it over to the clerk to see if we have any public comment.
There are no hands raised, Chair Moreno, at this moment.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for that very lively discussion. With that, we're gonna move on to item number 7. Give me 1 second to, here we are. Okay, item number 7 is Harbor Drive 2.0 concept of operation. Alex Estrella from SANDAG is here to present an overview of the next OS concept of operation and facilitate a discussion on initial input and needs. So Alex, feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Can you see me? I just turned on my camera. Perfect. So good morning, and thank you, Chair Moreno and the SANDAG team for giving us the opportunity for allowing us to present this item to this working group. My name is Alex Estrella, and I'm with SANDAG, and I'm the technology planning manager. And with me, also providing, being part of the presentation is Don Murphy, who's part of our team representing our consultant. And before I turn it over to him, I just want to give you some opening remarks and context, and pretty much let you know why we're here today.
Alex, sorry, Alex, before, are you going to run your PowerPoint?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Catherine, can you bring it up, please?
Sure thing. Give me a second. Can everyone see that well?
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. If you could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So as many of you are aware, the SANDAG put forward, and then you've been hearing about the 21 regional plan, and really the success for that plan really rests on the successful implementation of 5 big move concepts. But as part of that includes consideration of the transportation technologies that will really reflect the needs of all our transportation users. And I would just say, working in this industry for a while, we've done a fairly good job in working with the local agencies, trying to get input on how those technologies would be used, who would be owning those technologies, and who would be managing. But as part of this plan and the vision, we are committed to making sure that we also capture and include input from the community and the public to make sure that any technology improvements that we consider really provide and address the needs of all our customers, and really in order to truly improve everyone's access to basic needs and opportunities. And that's something that we have not done in the past, but we want to do better as we proceed forward, as we advance our regional plan. So to ensure for that to happen, this starts with what we call some of the initial technical planning documents called concept operations. So before we even start thinking about designing or thinking about technology, we as a region have to do a fairly good job in understanding the needs of all transportation users. And I would say, for example, if there's a strong need for safety along our intersections, or if we need to provide bilingual access to the tools, the technology tools to inform of the travel options that will be available, we need to capture that in these ConOps, and we need to capture that by going to like your group, and we also went to STAC to make sure that we capture those inputs or needs, so then we start thinking about how we design those solutions. So what you're going to be hearing about today is about one ConOps that we started along Harbor Drive. And what we like to do is just walk you through some of the key elements in this ConOps, but also Don's going to walk you through some initial high-level findings, but also seek your input on some initial needs and input. And then after that, we do have a survey that we'll share that will be available online, but also we will be happy to go to other working groups to provide the same presentation, but at the same time, get some additional input as
No
needed.
idea what slide I'm supposed to be on.
With that, let me just turn it over to Don.
Catherine, next slide, please.
Okay, cool.
You're doing good. Well, I don't think the slide advanced.
So while this slide is up, if I can ask, are you guys looking at in the upper?
Mr. Pollard, I'm sorry, I want to make sure that we have all the questions and comments at the end.
Okay, all right, sounds good. I'll come back to it.
I'm a you know.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I got
my meetings smoothly, so
Okay.
I think we're having some technical difficulties here. So if staff can maybe look into what's going on or reshare.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so as Alex mentioned, we've been working as part of this effort to draw from prior studies and working with a series of agencies in the Harbor Drive corridor to receive some initial feedback. As Alex mentioned, part of what this we needed to add to this is feedback from the different community groups. He mentioned we went to STAC a couple of weeks ago. They gave us some really good input about accessibility and wayfinding needs. And that's what we're trying to build on a little bit today, because it's very important in this concept of operations that we capture the needs and the technologies that we look to deploy in the future are aligned with those needs, as opposed to just deploying technology for technology's sake.
Don, sorry, can you just, the STAC is the Social Service Transportation Advisory Council of folks in the region that have ADA issues.
Okay, thank you. And next slide, please. So as Alex mentioned, a concept of operations is really a planning level document for what we do on the systems technology side. And it talks about the characteristics of the technologies, the users, what the different users, what their needs are, and what purposes the systems and technology are trying to serve or support. This can also be integrated with infrastructure improvements that may be occurring to improve mobility services or access, pedestrian access, other needs across the corridor. This ties very much into the Next OS concept as part of the 5 big moves. And really the goal here for the Harbor Drive corridor is to develop kind of an integrated approach on the technology side that addresses kind of the traveling and living conditions along the corridor and looks at the equity and community needs, and also looks at some of the conflicts and contradictory needs that may be occurring in the area there. And that's where it comes back to what we're trying to do today, which is get a better perspective on the community's input on what some of these needs might be from this concept of operations perspective. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the study area. It's generally bounded at the north end by the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal and I-5 on the east side, down to the National City Terminal, and including communities in Barrio, Logan, and the western portions of National City, as well as the naval base, the wet and dry side, and the shipyards. So I'm sure everybody's generally familiar with this area. There's a lot of different uses, a lot of different potentially conflicting activities going on that don't always well situate with one another. Next slide, please. So some of the initial feedback we've received from those other studies that we want to build on is what's generating issues related to access and safety issues around trolley stations, getting to and from those modes, as well as pedestrian crossings at key intersections. And then the higher levels of industrial and transportation related emissions that are impacting nearby residential communities, as well as traffic bottlenecks on major arterials, some which are generated by naval-based traffic or shipyard traffic that also impacts the nearby communities. Next slide, please. Over a number of years, a variety of activities have been undertaken to try and alleviate some of these. So here we're trying to look at what's still in play and where systems and technology might come into being part of the solution. Some of the other initial challenges were that some of the truck prohibitions that have been put in place for parking or trucks accessing through local streets have only been partially effective. That there's high truck parking demand, particularly near the National City Marine Terminal and in areas in National City that are conflicting with Bayshore Bikeway, as well as causing neighborhood impacts and potential emissions concerns, as well as broader safety concerns for pedestrians and cyclists, both along the Harbor Drive corridor itself, as well as extending into the communities. Next slide, please. So from a broad level, this led to some big picture perspectives that some of our key needs related to improving safety, really trying to reduce conflicts between freight and vehicular traffic, particularly as it relates to pedestrians and cyclists, and the visibility issues that creates, looking at helping to reduce and monitor environmental impacts, and also working towards helping with supporting access and accessibility needs. Next slide, please. One of the other areas that came into play, particularly to this community, I think this group received a recent presentation on digital divide across the broader region. This ConOps might be an opportunity to support some of the goals of the broader regional efforts in this area, particularly as portions of this community are in this study area are part of the lack of broadband access. So this might be an opportunity to leverage some of the other systems projects we're doing in the area to try and support that and alleviate some of those concerns. Next slide, please. So just to give a highlight, to give some sense, we wanted to talk about some example solutions. There's a wide range of these. We'd also be happy to hear from the group on needs as well as solutions you may have seen in other communities. These are just a little starting point. One is related to improving intersection technologies to support pedestrian safety, visibility, bicyclist access, improve accessibility and audible signals for people that have visual acuity problems, and then as well as dealing with multilingual features and universal symbology to overcome some of the traditional barriers. I think the group already had talked some about mobility hubs. Obviously, technologies are part of what supports mobility hubs and improving that access, improving multimodal travel choices, and making sure we have equitable access to the information that is part of making mobility hubs efficient, successful. Next slide, please. The other area that is emerging more commonly is actual active emissions monitoring over time to monitor trends and impacts, particularly within communities or sensitive areas. And I'm sure people are familiar with opportunities for community feedback applications where the community has an opportunity to interact more directly and understand, to reach out on ongoing issues that might relate to mobility challenges or other challenges that could impact accessibility and equity. Next slide, please. This was a few of the user needs that have come out from some of the discussions to date. This is some of the information we're hoping to have a discussion with this group a little bit today, as well as the follow-up in the survey that Alex mentioned. I just wanted to highlight these quickly as some examples. We talked a little bit about freight traffic and the conflicts and safety concerns for freight traffic, pedestrians and cyclists. Improving access, particularly pedestrian and other access to and from the transit stations. more active monitoring of air quality, dealing with vehicle congestion on major arterials, including Harbor Drive, Cesar Chavez, 28th and 32nd. More actively looking at preventing trucks from entering local neighborhood streets to reduce exposures to negative impacts of that. Trying to support more equitable access to shared transportation modes, and supporting multilingual wayfinding and traveler information across the study area. And then while doing this, also supporting maintaining the community characters and values. So with that, we kind of have the survey slide as next. I guess we go to the next slide. The survey that you'll have access to from these links kind of relates to giving input on some of those initial needs, as well as an opportunity to input additional needs that may be missing or that this group feels are important. So with that, I'd like to open it back up to the group to hopefully provide us some initial thoughts and input, and then we can go from there.
Thank you for the presentation. So now if working group members have comments, please raise your hand and turn on your camera. We're going to start off with Mr. Barry Pollard.
Chairperson, my questions can wait. This is a specific, area with Harbor Drive. So let's see if the other folks that are closer geographically to this has any questions.
Nobody has raised their hand or turned on their camera. Oh, here we go. Let's start off with Rosina.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rosina, you muted yourself. So if
I'm sorry. Yeah. Playing around with this technology, man. Thank you. This goes directly in connection with our area that we're located. I would like, there's a question, when the survey is going to be, the span of collecting data from the survey, when it's going to be posted and we can spread it out and disseminate that information, that would be nice. And also there was another question, let's see. That'll be part of what type of implementation program is in the deadline for that. I didn't see that part.
Okay,
that's my question.
Alex, did you?
Yes, the survey actually, Catherine, can you post the links on the chat? We should have that available to you all in real time. And if you could take a look at it, I mean, we'll wait about a couple of weeks to get your input, and that should be available now. In terms of the implementation, right now, the goal is to complete the CONOPS by early next year. And out of the CONOPS, there's going to be a number of strategies and recommendations, and we come back and maybe highlight those strategies and recommendations. And then after that, so we'll have kind of this initial study completed. So we'll be ready if future funding becomes available or as the plan gets implemented. So then we can actually start thinking about how do we carry out the next phase of the study.
All right, thank you. And thank you so much. I appreciate the fact that you're going to include in language, because it's always a barrier. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
And Alex, just to make sure we all understood what you said, the survey is out right now and you're going to leave it up for the next 2 weeks. Did I get that correct?
Correct.
And if you could clarify for all of us what CONOPS means.
Sorry, Concept of Operations.
Of operations, okay.
I apologize.
We let me see who we have here. We have Mr. Barry Pollard and Mr. Craig Jones with their hands raised. So Mr. Pollard, if you'd like to ask your questions.
Sure. There's Alex, is this going to be a model of all of the implementations of the iOS system as we move through I guess the county or the region?
No, that's a great question. And the simple answer is yes. I think in the past, when we carried out new technologies, we would do CONOPS, concept operations, but really focus mainly working with our local agencies. But it is going to be a model. The idea here is that, we need to get this necessary input from the community as we start planning for the technologies. So we start involving for other quarters in the region. Absolutely.
And then maybe Don might be able to answer this one, but I'm wondering, what type, generally, not a whole lot of specifics, but generally, what type of infrastructure is required? And there's some areas that don't have much infrastructure. And so what we don't want to do is when the iOS systems start rolling around to our underserved communities, we don't have the infrastructure in place to enjoy the, the quality of transportation that iOS is going to be as an intricate part of this process, right?
Right.
So is there any special, requirement, or is that going to be assessed, or?
Yeah, so one of the things we'll do is, as we identify the needs and prioritize those, we'll look at the existing supporting infrastructure. And traditionally that relates to things like communications, power. Right. But I think in this sense, given your question, what we need to look at more is, are there barriers to that element being properly used? Is there just simply a lack of ability to get from A to B because there's a lack of sidewalks, or it doesn't make any sense to try and implement certain system solutions if we can't integrate it with and alleviate some of the infrastructure issues or some of the service issues. So I think that anything that floats up as a high need, we'll need to look at the supporting infrastructure and what gaps may be occurring. And there's other ongoing infrastructure projects in the area we're coordinating with, for example, Bayshore Bikeway, that can be part of that discussion as well.
Okay, and part of that infrastructure is not only the sidewalks and the complete streets design and that kind of thing, it's also the cable that may be required to carry the data to these neighborhoods. That's the number, that's the most expensive. And so I just want it to be on the radar screen as you move through this process, that there may be some cable issues, i.e. digital divide issues that a lot of these communities are going to have.
And I would just like to add that's a key focus as part of the digital divide work that our team is leading, because before we even start thinking about technologies, as you've indicated, we need to start thinking about really making sure that those technologies talk to each other, and foundational is communications infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. I feel better.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard, for your comments. And I should add that there is this is the concept of operations, but there is Harbor Drive 2.0 that is being carried right now by Caltrans, the environmental assessment of Harbor Drive 2.0. So there is a bigger plan that we're going to need a lot of federal and state money on. So but going back to comments, we're talking about concept of operations. We're going to start with Craig Jones, followed by Claire, and then Lisa Cuesta. Craig, the floor is yours.
Thank you. These kinds of projects are going to generate a tremendous amount of additional data. I trust that as that data is generated, that there will be protection of privacy for any data that's personally identifiable. This, I think, it will be especially important in our communities of concern. So I trust that that's the case. I'm curious, I gather that this initial proof of concept project would include Wi-Fi antennas for broadband access along that stretch of Harbor Drive. How far into the adjacent communities that currently lack individual household broadband access, how far into those communities will those antennas reach?
I'll take a stab first. We agree with you. One of our most commitments as we start thinking about the data that's shared, that security is of utmost importance. And in fact, we could come back to all of you, because we do have a number of internal SANDAG efforts to ensure that security and the data that's going to be sharing is obviously maintained internally. And with regards to the technology itself, we're not at that stage in terms of how far from the project itself, but it will include, I'm assuming, a combination of Wi-Fi or wireless or hardwired type of communications.
Does that conclude your comments, Mr. Jones?
Yes, I was just curious with this initial project, how much of the lack of broadband access would be provided. How many feet into those communities would that broadband access reach?
And we could come back to all of you with the more details. At this point, I believe the digital plan is still being developed. And I think it was mentioned earlier, there's planning on going to the board next month.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions. Claire, followed by Lisa Cuestas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation. I imagine that this is part of the conversation, but I just wanted to uplift the importance of education for our communities. There's some barriers to technology literacy in many of the communities that we serve, and so making sure that as new technologies come online, that we're developing strategies to make sure that we're educating community on how to actually utilize those new technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Moving on to Lisa Cuestas.
Hi, thank you. I just want to continue to elevate that importance of connection and collaboration and starting to reach out to groups like SDG&E and communication providers that we just saw during the pandemic, and the frequency of outages that specific communities experience is a very, very real thing. San Isidro gets hit very, very often by just complete outages. And a lot of our systems organizationally are impacted in a negative way on a regular basis. And I think that's just something that I want to put out there, that was something that Mr. Pollard was touching on, of how big of an issue that is for specific communities, is something that I think needs to be at the forefront of the planning phase.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other members wishing to be recognized? Well, as many of you know, this is in my district, so I absolutely have a few comments. First off, if staff could email the equity group the survey so that we will have it in our inbox. And I want to thank staff. I should have said this before. I want to thank staff for this presentation. I think this working group, having staff here show us this, the concept of operation, I think really demonstrates the elevation that we have made as an equity working group. So kudos to the working group. And I love all the comments that you made and the questions that you had. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure that Alex and I'm sorry, Mr. Murphy and Mr. Estrella know is I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there are a few organizations in the community of Barrio Logan that we should absolutely be contacting. And I'll just start off by saying the Barrio Logan Planning Group, Barrio Logan Maintenance Assessment District, Barrio Logan College Institute, Chicano Park Museum, Barrio Station, Chicano Federation. You don't have to write this down, Mr. Espino. We will send you all this information, but I cannot stress, Claire and Claire brought this up, and somebody, I don't remember who else brought it up, but having our community know what is going on and having them have a say is just the utmost. The transparency part is the utmost importance for me when it comes to my community. They are my bosses, so let's make sure that that we reach out to the community and we at least allow them the opportunity to engage should they wish to. Now with that, and thank you for the presentation. It was very it's just really, I can't find another word. It's just really cool to see the concept of operation actually coming to fruition. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to present to our working group today. I don't see any members with their hands raised or their cameras on. So we're gonna go on to public comment. Clerk, if you could verify public comment.
I don't see any hands raised for public comment, Chair Moreno.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Murphy and Mr. Estrella. We, through Jane, we will get you a list of those organizations, and we appreciate you coming out and presenting to us very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to item number 8. So regarding topics for the next meeting, staff has suggested the cancellation of our December meeting to allow them more time to prepare for the December 10th and 17th board meeting, as well as to allow the CBOs to focus on their outreach efforts between now and then. I do want to note that there was a request to hear an update at the last working group meeting on the San Ysidro Mobility Hub Intermodal Transit Center. I'm happy to report that staff has indicated that they are working with Casa Familiar to create a stakeholder working group specifically for the San Ysidro Mobility Hub, and that this group could receive such an update very soon. So unless there are any other suggestions for either the next meeting or future meeting, any members wishing to speak? Mr. Pollard, the floor is yours.
Okay, I just had a quick thought that maybe we can discuss at the future. About having at least 1 or 2 of these meetings held like in the early evenings when people are off work.
Yes.
And because I've noticed there has not really been an opportunity it's been an opportunity, but not a lot of public comment. So, this is what we talk about all the time about going to the community and let me just throw that up there. Maybe we could discuss it in the future.
I absolutely love that. And should I have the honor to be chair next year for this working group, I think that should be, maybe twice a year or whatever we decide at a future date. I think that's a wonderful idea. Thank you for bringing that up. And then hopefully getting out to the communities as we had anticipated when I first started chairing. So thank you for that. Ms. Rosina, I see your hand raised.
Oh yeah, thank you. I was like, should I say this? Just to remark everybody that this is totally aligns with the Santiago Forward draft. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same because they're going to revise it on December 10th, but this is Appendix L for active transportation and totally aligns to that, which says all ages and abilities by facilitation is. So take a look on that and have a little quick deep study in that one because it's totally aligned with this appendix. Thank you.
I'm sorry, was that a comment for a future, because we're on future topics for.
Yeah, because they're talking about facilities, but we don't have the infrastructure yet habilitated for this facility. So it's an invitation to revise it so we can speak about it and discuss it if it's totally aligned with the draft.
I'm gonna ask staff to follow up with you just to get, because I am interested to put that at a future meeting just to get more details.
Yes,
okay.
Thank you.
And so I don't see it. Thank you. Absolutely. I don't see anybody else with their hand raised. So we are going to move on to public comment. Clerk, if you could verify.
I don't see any hands raised for public comment.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to item number 10, which is upcoming meetings. As I said earlier, even though the agenda indicates that the next meeting will be in December, staff has requested that the meeting be canceled. So the next meeting of the Social Equity Working Group is going to be in January at a specific date and time to be determined. And so happy holidays to everybody. Always feel free to reach out to staff or to me should you have any comments or questions about the working group. And with that, thank you all for the very robust conversation we had. I really, truly appreciate this group just stepping up and just giving us wonderful feedback. So we are officially adjourned at 11:40 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Chair Moreno, we were actually in item number 9 for the upcoming meetings, and the next meeting that was on the agenda is Thursday, December 2nd. Was that not scheduled for that date?
As I indicated, staff has requested that the December meeting be canceled, and so our next meeting is in January.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely, no problem. Wonderful, everybody. Have a wonderful day.